So today we're going to talk about the Great Resignation, and I think you're a bit of an expert on this, aren't you, Chris?
Is that because I've resigned from everything?
Could
I
well
don't
be.
know.
Could well
Does
be.
that make me an expert by default?
Maybe.
Um,
Maybe.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, the Great Resignation is something that I'm fascinated by, with this whole sort of movement of, you know, disengaged people that are just disengaged with work in its sort of, original concept or its current concept. And so you've got this great movement where people are just sort of signing out of work, or the 9 to 5, if you like, and finding other ways to make a living.
Can I ask you? Because I mean, yeah, I didn't know anything about it really till you raised it and said, we should really look at this and have an understanding of it. And of course, since then, it's like it crops up everywhere, of course.
Yeah.
But is this like an American thing, or is it happening in the UK as well?
Oh, it's definitely happening in the UK. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's happening everywhere. I mean, I think it's being attributed to sort of lockdown and coronavirus and making people reassess their lives and the balance in terms of work life, counterbalance. But it's definitely affecting everyone, and it's a movement that seems to be growing momentum as well, with people looking at different ways of now earning a living, and not being tied to one particular revenue stream or income source either. People are much more flexible around, having multiple revenue streams or income streams, so they don't have to subscribe to that 9 to 5, and they can work on their own terms. So it's a resignation. It's not a resignation from work as such. I think it's a resignation from the sort of constructs, or the traditional constructs and confines of work as a concept, where you clock in and clock out, you're on call, or you're on hand in an office or whatnot. So people are, far more interested now in flexible working from home, working around their other commitments, and also taking on some other commitments, because I'm sure you and I can relate to passing on certain things that we probably wanted to do but just didn't have the capacity to do when we were working and locked in that machine.
Yeah.
That sort of factory mentality, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's definitely growing momentum, and of course there are lots of emerging technology platforms, if you like, that are enabling this as well, that are enabling people to earn revenue from doing different things. And it's really, people are sort of starting to tune into this new definition of what work is, and what income generation is, particularly through technology. I sort of think about some of Dan Pink's talks, around this kind of shifting evolution of work and the concept of work, and he talks about this sort of conceptual age, where it's going to be creativity, and that's going to be the driving force, particularly as things like AI come into play and take more of a sort of foothold in the working landscape. And I think we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see people tune into that and actually realize there is more to life.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a lot of this, although I hadn't heard it in the context of this idea of the Great Resignation. But the idea of the gig economy has been around for many years, and really, from what you're saying, it to me it sounds like an extension of that. And when I was working as a public speaking coach, working with Andy Harrington, a lot of the people who came on that were people who were looking to take their expertise and monetize it in a new way, and create a new income stream from that perspective. So, I've actually seen quite a lot of this now that I really think about it. And the other aspect I sort of bumped into this was a couple of years ago. I was investigating creating a development program, and I was working with a really interesting woman. She had had a pretty stellar corporate career, and had come out of that and is now acting as an executive coach. And we were looking at trying to develop a program specifically for women, to support women on their path up the corporate ladder, because we know that there's an intention to try and get diversity in the boardroom at that level, but actually the reality is it's proving a lot harder for that to really happen in real life. So we thought, you know, there was something that we could offer in that space. And one of the things that she was doing, she's a really interesting woman. She was doing some work with a young girls group in London, and also a young girls group up in Cambridge or somewhere. And she said it was incredibly interesting, the difference in attitude between the two groups. So the girls were sort of in the 18 to 21 age group, sort of at that stage where they're thinking about what they want to do with their lives. And so the girls up in the Cambridge group, it was very much, yeah, probably go to university, get a career, what you might call perhaps a bit more of a traditional outlook, but quite almost unidimensional. You know, there wasn't like a lot of thinking outside of the box in terms of what a career might look like.
Yeah.
The girl she was talking to in London, it was like, yeah, well, I'm going to come out, I'm going to get this massive job at one of the big like finance companies. You know, I'll be earning 80 grand a year by the time I'm 22. And I'll have a side hustle getting me 100 grand a year,
yeah,
you know, on the side. And it's like no idea about the reality of what it takes to get a business to the point where it's turning over 100 grand, and no real idea of what it takes to actually get a job that pays you 80 grand.
Yeah.
You know,
or keep both of those going,
and keep both of those going, and then have a life outside it, you know. And it's like there's this idea, and you see it a lot, you know, promoted, you know, on Facebook, on YouTube, on all of these social media platforms, you know, how to make $1 million and all these sorts of things. And I know there are advertising limits in terms of what they allow you to say, but this idea that, you know, you can, you know, create this incredible laptop lifestyle, you know, working from your laptop. And sure, some people can do it, but my question is, how real is it?
Yeah.
You know, is it a pipe dream that people are being sold?
Yeah.
And how many people actually do manage to create a secure living outside of that safety of a corporate salary or an employed salary where you know you're going to get paid every month?
Yeah, I mean, I keep seeing stories of people now that have done that in various ways. There's a lot of kind of news around sort of crypto dabblings that's led to, you know, overnight successes of, you know, people that's given them sort of that financial security to do whatever they want. You know, I think the most recent one was a kid who's, I think he's about 11 or something like that, and he's, you know, he's just turned 750 grand by, you know, doing pixelated pictures of whales, basically the animal whales,
right.
And selling them, you know, online. And you've got this whole shift with you know, sort of digital art now, which is changing hands for ridiculous sums of money, and providing people with great wealth, you know, out of almost nothing, very little investment. And so you are seeing these stories come through, and then equally you're seeing people that are juggling a couple of jobs on a part-time basis or an ad hoc basis, that are sustaining their level of income that they need. I think what's changed, I think, is that people have realised perhaps they don't need as much. And so what COVID's done for a lot of people is realised it's brought home to them what's really important, things about health and security and all that sort of stuff. And this sort of burning the candle at both ends to get that 180 grand salary or whatever it might be, and the, you know, the mansion. I think people are sitting there thinking, well, actually, is that necessary? Can we just take a step below that, take our foot off the gas a bit, and get a balance with, you know, lifestyle, being able to do the things that you want to do, and then also, you know, having that steady income stream and that security. So I think it's an interesting one. I also think there's another dynamic in there where those big jobs, and I know you and I have talked about this before, where there's almost like there's a threshold with a salary where you're paid to sacrifice stuff that's personal to you and important to you. and compromise on your life, you know, and that's why the salary is high. It's like, we're paying you this amount so you can put us first before your kids or before your family. And I think there's a disengagement with that as well, where people are thinking, well, actually, I don't want to do that anymore.
I see that. I see that with some of the younger clients that I work with, where it's like very clear that they have a different outlook, and it's, I saw my mum and dad go through that. I don't want to live that way. Actually, I'm not going to be able to afford to buy a house till I'm 30 or 40 years old. So what's the point? There's all that sort of stuff, and I see it in my own kids, and they have a very different outlook in terms of what they see for themselves, and they're in their mid-20s. So there's a real sort of I don't know what you want to call it, like a culture shift going on. And I think this really hit home to me just yesterday when I was talking with a client, and they were talking about how hard it is to get good people into the business. And there's this idea that there aren't any good people out there, and they were talking with somebody who was having the same problem, and and I come across this a lot. It's like, oh, there's no good people out there, and it really annoys me, actually, because I think it's an insult, because actually I think there's lots and lots of good people out there.
There are.
And I think what it really speaks into more than anything else is most businesses haven't mentally got their heads around how to shift from almost like an arrogance of saying, well, here I'm going to pay you a salary, you
build it and they will come, isn't it? It's a build it and they will come mentality.
And it's like, now it's much more akin. I don't know, have you ever come across that? It's quite a famous phrase or saying that Richard Branson is attributed with, which is, train your people to the best, so that they can get any job and they can do anything, and then pay them well enough and treat them well enough so they don't want to leave. And that sort of goes back to the old joke, which I'm sure you've heard. It's like the chief exec of the business is saying to his finance director, we've got to train our people, and the finance director is going, yeah, but what happens if we train them and they leave? And the chief exec goes, yeah, but what happens if we don't train them and we stay?
Exactly. It is that.
And I think now, actually, it's a bit of a cliche joke. But actually, I think it's hugely real problem for businesses today. It's like, you can no longer just say, well, I'm offering this job and hope that there's going to be people out there.
I mean, we've seen it play out in sort of on a smaller scale with different industries, haven't we, where they've just kept that same mentality. Think about things like Blockbuster and Kodak and stuff that, where you just think, well, they had that same approach. And what we're seeing now is business as a whole on a vast scale is in danger of falling into that pitfall by just staying very rigid and not actually moving with the times. I know it's a kind of a glib statement, but I can't help but think there's an air of disillusionment that sits underneath this great resignation with what's on offer. And how important is that to people?
I think you're absolutely on the right thing there. And I always try and relate these sort of chats and these principles that we see being played out to, like, what does it mean for the small business person, or the sort of the business with 50 or 100 employees. It's like big corporations, they have the resources to deal with these challenges, and it's in a way it's easier for them because they're big brands. And so the sort of person that is wanting to have that corporate career and is prepared to go and do the university journey and get the the first class degree, possibly even go on and get the master's or PhD if that's what's needed. The big organizations attract those people. I think the challenge is for the organizations that are smaller than that, and significantly smaller at the lower end. It's like, if you're a small business, how do you put yourself out there that you are an attractive and viable career proposition for somebody that is good.
Yeah.
But mostly what I hear is, oh, there's no good people out
There's
there.
no good people, yeah. It's an easy thing, isn't it? It's easy to look outwardly and just say, well, it's the world's fault.
Exactly. Yeah, blame culture, right? But what they then don't realize is that actually that's a culture that sort of, if you've got that culture, it sort of imbues itself through.
Yeah, exactly. It's ingrained,
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I've been wrestling with this idea of the idea of like a new social contract really between employees and employers for quite some time now. You know, when I first got on this path, which was, I think 2012, after I was made redundant for the second time, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And as I thought back to my experiences, both in the corporate world and with smaller businesses that I'd worked in, it was like, I had this realization that although there were aspects of being a manager leader that I was good at, you know, and aspects of the job that I was good at, there were definitely aspects that I needed developing. And the companies I worked for had no sense that it was their remit to help me develop in those areas. But equally, I had no sense there was any. I didn't even know the idea of personal development existed, to be honest. It was like only after I'd been made redundant that I came across the term personal development as opposed to professional development. You know, CPD, continual professional development. Yeah, heard of that. But the idea you could develop yourself personally, wow, that was a very new thing to me. And you know, what's really, I think, coming out now is as a business, you have a responsibility to help your people develop. But there's also the other side of that coin is, as a person going to work for a business, you have a responsibility to develop yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and it's a bilateral thing. You know, it's like the responsibility. It's a collaboration, and if you start to look at things that way, then actually the great resignation is not a problem, because what you then start to look for in your people is, who are the people who've got the potential to be what I want them to be, what I need them to be, and what they want to be, and who can get the best of themselves by coming to work for us. Now, that's a very different proposition.
Oh, absolutely. But we don't. I mean, then that's the thing. It's not a collaborative process at the moment, is it? It's we're still working on this sort of view of, right, I'm a business, I need someone. What do I need? I need a square peg for a square hole, for example. And right, well, how do we describe that square hole and that square peg? Well, okay, well, we'll look at what everyone else has done in the past, or you know, I've done that in the past over there. It's just it's a sales manager or something like that. This is what a sales manager is, and that's what we need, because that's what I needed before, and it worked there. And then they go out, and it's all very generic and vanilla. And really, I sometimes wonder whether, because the world is getting bigger or smaller in many ways, but you know, everything's expanding. You know, technology is expanding and taking over and feeding into areas that we're not used to it feeding into. Going back to that sort of creativity need, surely that's the sort of thing that we should be tapping into as sort of business owners and leaders. And of course, if you're only offering things that are built around like, you know, traditional ways of improving, which are normally efficiency, cost saving, time saving, you know, doing a better job in terms of, it's very logistical, you know, in its nature, then you're closing off all of that creativity anyway, because your measures in place are, can you do it quicker? You know, can you do it in less time with less aggravation? More autonomy, but they're not really tapping into the skills that are out there and creating roles that like you say, leverage the qualities of people that are out there. They're just trying, you know, put square pegs in round holes.
And in fact, before we started, I was chatting with a client, had a client call, and one of the things we were talking about is, you know, when you run a business, almost the biggest challenge you have now is to know what's going wrong at the bottom of the business. Because when you run the business, you've got so much going on in your head. and inevitably, when problems get to you, they get to you when they're really bad.
Yeah, it's too late almost in many ways. Yeah.
And so part of the challenge is, as you scale up, when you're a smaller business, and this is one of the challenges that the people who started their business, they really have a problem letting go. It's not because they are control freaks. I mean, there is an element of that.
Yeah.
But actually what it's more about is they don't know how to create a system underneath themselves that allows them to find out what's going wrong. When you run a business and you are the linchpin of that business, but when things are going wrong, so you can get on them before they become too bad, before the snowball starts rolling down the hill and it gets out of control. And so you've got that sense that you're offering really good client service. The customers love you because they can see, oh yeah, that you really sorted that out, and you got to it before it was a problem. But when you don't have systems and processes underneath you to bring those things that are starting to go wrong to your attention quick enough, that's when things start to get out of control. And so it's like, well, why does that happen? What stops people from revealing what's going wrong? And then we're into this idea of personal development, and something else that has come onto my radar in literally the last few weeks as well, in a very big way, is the idea of psychological safety. Where it's like, how many businesses have you worked in, and I know I have, where you did not feel safe revealing something that was going wrong to your boss, because you thought, actually, I'm gonna get it in the neck. So you keep quiet, or in worst case, you see people who actually hide what's going wrong. Now some people do it out of loyalty. Some people think they're doing the right thing. But other people, it's like it's fear that stops them.
Absolutely.
And this is all part of personal development. So one of the things we were talking about today was how important the skill of being able to diagnose what a problem is. So a lot of reasons that, or one of the main reasons that people don't reveal what a problem is, what a challenge is when it's early, is they don't know how to diagnose it. And so they then don't know how to actually communicate that to whoever they should communicate it to. So it doesn't get revealed until the problem reveals itself. So those are the sorts of skills that I mean by personal development, and they're the sort of skills that businesses need to help their people develop, and they're the sort of skills that individuals need to understand that they have to develop.
I think there's another dynamic at play there as well, which is often overlooked by businesses when you're looking at sort of terms of personal development. What that does is it builds a common interest, and it builds a passion almost for that business. It builds the loyalty, the advocacy, the passion, the understanding. Although you're developing yourself, if we keep everyone in jobs, then we're subconsciously that it's just reinforcing that idea, well, clock in and clock out, that's not my problem. I'm just, I get paid to do something.
I get paid to do a job.
And that's it. And the things outside of that, the grey areas, are not my responsibility, because I don't get paid enough, or I don't get listened to enough. All those things. And so when you're investing in your people and helping them on that sort of personal development journey, it just pulls everything together. A tighter knit group. They've got more skin in the game. They understand where they fit. They understand where they can add value. And they understand things about themselves that the leadership doesn't. And then they can come to leadership with ideas, with ways of adding value, and feel comfortable doing that, and know how to communicate, as you say.
Yeah.
So I think that's a value that people often overlook, because I think they decompartmentalize almost and say, well, personal development, that's going to help you.
Yes.
How is that going to help me?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the other thing, of course, that goes with that is it's the personal development stuff that gets called woo-woo. It's the stuff that gets called the soft skills,
yeah,
which drives me crazy. And so I was reading a book, which I've just started reading it. It's called Leadership Isn't for Cowards. And the guy who wrote it, he actually says, this stuff isn't psychobabble.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you feel the need to sort of
say that?
define it as psychobabble? It's like, you know, for some reason, talking about all of this stuff is like, well, because it's not numbers, because it's not profit, because it's not cash. It's like, you know, it's like, that's the stuff that wimps talk about. You know, that's the stuff people who aren't hard-headed business people, you know, that's what they talk about. You know, what you're talking about is adding cost to a business. And, you know, you're not talking about driving, you know, sales. You're not talking about driving profit. You're not talking about driving cash flow, you know, and all of those things. But when you step back and think, well, where does that performance come from?
Yeah.
It only comes from one place. It comes from people.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you're not doing the things that supports people to perform in the way that you need, then that's why bad things happen. You know, it's that when people start to do bad things to deliver performance,
they cut corners.
You then have to pay account for at some point in the future, you know, and it's, so, and I think it also feeds into something you said earlier about how AI is coming in, and, you know, again, you know, these conversations are happening for me on a weekly basis. I'm saying, look, you know, what you've got to remember is if what you do is a purely functional thing, you know, like data entry or something like that, someone somewhere around the world is working on an algorithm
that will do that
automatically, or they're working on an app on your phone. So, I mean, we've already got it in accountancy and in you know, you can take a photo of your credit receipt, of your you know, purchase receipts, you know, go to a restaurant, you know, take a photo of the bill, the app then sends it to the right place, it gets filed into the right accounting thing, boom, done, right? No need for a bookkeeper. You know? Now, you know, that is being worked on and refined and developed all the time, and it's happening in law. So I read somewhere recently that we're not far off a place where if you're in an advocacy or diagnostic profession like law or medicine, that if you diagnose and make a prescription without referring to some AI technology, so from a law perspective, it's going to be looking at legal precedents, you know, what's gone on in the past, etc. Obviously, medical, it's you know what are other diagnoses, and you could be held negligently liable if you haven't actually you know gone in and looked at the AI possible solutions, you know. And I can see the benefit of that, but I think it's also an incredibly frightening thing as well, because you know we've already seen in the advent of sat-nav technology that what happens is people start to abdicate their responsibilities. So it's like if I was to ask my, well, actually I was going to say my son, but actually that's not fair because he is learning map reading because he's in the army. But
I'm one of those people.
There you go. Right. Okay.
I'm one of those people. So, you know, it is a running joke about my sense of direction.
Yeah.
And you know, I can pass that off and say, well, I didn't learn to drive until I was like 39 or something like that. Well, that's nonsense, really. I'd never been interested in direction. I'd always lived in the city, close to things. I would use public transport to get anywhere. I never needed to drive. Moved to the country, needed to drive. I was always a disengaged passenger in terms of I was too busy interested in the radio or the music that was playing than actually paying attention to where I was. And now I'm completely reliant on sat nav. And it's a joke, you know, I do a trip, as you know, I do a trip most weeks, you know, probably 2-3 times that week, and I still need my sat nav every time. There is no way on earth I would get there. I just don't retain it. I just don't retain it. And it's a bit like, I remember a time when I knew everyone's phone number. You know, I don't know anyone's phone number now. I just know mine. That's it. Because I rely on a piece of technology that remembers all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know my own. You know, I actually, I can't remember where I was. I was doing something the other week, and they asked me for my phone number, and I couldn't remember. I actually had to look it up on my phone. Yeah, you know, it's like,
but it's a use it or lose it mentality, isn't it? You know, and all these things, we just say, well, actually, technology's got that covered, and because of the time that I learned to drive, that technology was already there. So I just went, well, I'm just going to get a car with a sat nav. Job done. Then I can go anywhere. But honestly, it's a running joke for me. You know, my barber gives me all sorts of stick for it. He's younger than me, but he's about 10 years younger than me, but has been driving longer.
And
so I, you know, I'm one of those people.
But if we sort of wrap this back, you know, what I think is emerging from this. So you were talking earlier about, you know, companies still recruiting people to fit into a box to do a job. Yeah. And I remember some years ago now, and I can't remember exactly how many, there was a book, From Good to Great. And I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it. I should look it up really. Jim Peters. I think was it Jim Peters? Anyway, might be wrong. But From Good to Great is definitely the book. And he had this concept it's like, you don't just want people to come in and do a job. You want people who want to be on the bus with you and go on the journey. Yeah, exactly. And again, it's a bit of a cliche, but it is right. You know, it's like, I think part of it is, it's not just about having a business where you have people who come in and do a job. It's like, what is this business for? Yeah. You know, why am I doing this business? Where is it going? Where do I want it to be in 3 and 5 years time? You know, what's my goal for this business? It's like, is it that I just want it to make me a millionaire so I can sell it? Well, you know, if that's what it is, and that's what you put out there, then the only people you're going to get to work for you are the people who are going to go, fine, I'll come and help you, but I want a slice of the action. Yeah, exactly. And most businesses aren't like that. You know, most businesses need their people to be engaged with their clients at the coal face. Yeah. Because that's where things go wrong. And, you know, this is where I think it ties back to the idea of the big resignation. It's because businesses have not addressed that issue. They haven't helped their people to see how they can fulfill themselves and how their business can help them as individuals fulfill themselves meaningfully with a sense of purpose by being on that bus and going on that direction with them. Yeah, that's the key word, isn't it? It's purpose. It's about purpose and understanding where that fits. And actually you can have multiple purposes collaborating and fulfilling each other's purpose. You don't have to, like you said, you know, if you've got one purpose, which is I want to make £1 million, and then, you know, the nature of the work needs to be articulated in a way that helps people understand it and helps people connect into it. You know, there's that famous story of, you know, John F. Kennedy visiting NASA and speaking to the janitor, and, you know, what do you do here? Yeah, I help put a man on the moon. Yeah, you know, and it's that's the kind of thing that's absent, I think, with a lot of businesses. Yeah. And when you've got people questioning their own purpose, you know, during the pandemic, and questioning the things that are actually important to them, it makes people reassess, reevaluate their lives and what they've been doing. They're then looking for inspiration and looking for things that attract, that are attractive to them. Yeah. And if you're just seeing jobs, then you're going to look at alternative solutions. Absolutely. And I do think there's another side to that coin as well. And I think, I mean, still we're in a situation where in any business, there are some roles where you just want people to come in and do that job. Yeah, of course. You know, they're pretty functional jobs. Yeah. And there are some people who just want a job like that. You know, there are
they
some
just
people
want to clock in and clock out,
and they just want to come in. They want to work hard. They want to earn their money, but they want to come out. They want to go home at 5 o'clock and then do whatever they want to do and come back the next day.
Yeah, my great uncle did that.
Sorry,
my great uncle did that, and he passed on every possible promotion.
Yeah,
and he lived till he was 99.
Yeah, well,
perfectly happy.
Yeah. And I think the challenge with that, though, is the drive to AI and the drive to automation that is now, you know, in the white collar jobs. You know, blue collar has pretty much been automated and it's still being done, but it's, you know, it's very much in those professions now are being automated in the way we were talking earlier. But you know, that's going to make those sorts of jobs less and less prevalent.
Yeah, absolutely.
They won't disappear completely. They won't disappear completely, but it means that there's less of them around for people who just want I don't want to use the phrase an easy ride, because I'm not saying their jobs are easy, but they're very structured.
Yeah,
you know, you come in, you know what you've got to do, you do it.
It's a steady job, isn't it?
And in many ways, you don't really have to think too much out of the box. And so from that point of view, they're not that challenging. So yeah, that will attract a certain type of person. But those sorts of jobs are fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
And the sort of skills and qualities that just about every business needs now is they need people who can assess what's going on in the moment, who can have conversations with clients that they're going to be influential. Yeah. So influencing is a huge skill, and it's a skill that can be learned. And again, it's like a skill that isn't taught, but it's got to be a two-way thing. It's like, you know, business has got to say, look, if you're going to do this job for us and come on this journey, you've got to learn how to be positively influential internally and externally.
Yeah.
Now that's a skill to learn. Now we'll support you in doing that, and this is the part we'll play, but you've got to play a part in that as well. You know, you've got to become self-aware on the impact that you have through your behaviors. It's like, you know, if you're sitting on a Zoom call and you're all like moody and you're like, you know, your body language is off and you're fed up and, you know, whatever it might be, and you're sucking energy from the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be aware of that, because actually you're not really contributing positively to us moving forward. And that's a self-awareness thing, and we can help you with that, but you've got to be willing to go down that path as well. You know, it's got to be this collaborative approach to personal development, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So, have we done it? Have we gone in a circle?
I think we've gone in a circle,
yeah. So I think that's just one last point on that really is my frustration is how many business people I meet who still don't get that.
Yeah.
That's what I think is, for me, the missing part. Is still, most business owners are driven purely by the numbers, and that gets, what's the word, emphasized even more when they have shareholders, and even more so if they've raised money through venture capital or private equity.
Yeah.
Because, you know, those sorts of marketplaces are really almost purely numbers driven.
Yeah, you know, it influences the way they look at people, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I still think there's a long way to go to really get this message out there. But what I do see is those businesses that get it, they're the ones that are really moving forward. They're the ones that are looking.
Thrive. They're the future, aren't they?
Yeah, they're the ones. They're not the ones who are looking out there going, "Oh, there's no good people."
Yeah. Because
actually, the good people are seeing them and thinking, "Yeah, that's a place I'd actually like to go and work."
Yeah, exactly.